Tell me about the Media Access Awards and what brought you out today.
Media Access Awards are about moving the needle when it comes to disability rights. I chair the Diversity Advisory Committee for SAG-AFTRA, and we have committees that represent each of what we call the protected classes, people that have been underrepresented in media and need a little bit of extra help. One of those groups is the performers with disabilities, and they have become the loudest, most vocal part of our group because the reality is, of the protected classes, they are arguably the largest because people think of a disability as having lost a limb in some accident or in the war. But the reality is most of us are going to end up with a disability at some point in time in our lives. When your vision starts to fail, when your hearing fails, we don't think of it that way because somehow that's different. But the reality is it's not. And so it's a lot closer. You know somebody with a disability, you just don't think about it all the time. But if you stop and think about it, we need to make sure they're represented in their part of the media landscape as well. So I come out to the Media Access Awards because they are fighting that fight. And I'm giving an award to the RUDERMAN Foundation, who has been an incredibly loud, vocal advocate for performance of disabilities and disability rights in general. So it's a good day.
And then, is there a TV show or film that you saw growing up that inspired you that's like, being an actor is more than just like the glitz and glamour of red carpets and stuff, but like this means something because it's like a good social statement?
Wow. You know what? It's going to sound crazy, but I remember one of my earliest memories of being really kind of affected was there was an episode of Good Times, a bunch of episodes of Good Times back in the day. I mean, Norman Lear back in the day, and that entire cast of theater trained out, Esther Roll, they recognized that you can do good and do well. So while they had the platform to do this sitcom and make everybody laugh, every once in a while they would do an episode where they pumped the brakes and they hit you with something that made you feel. And I remember there was an episode, and I'm like totally dating myself, but JJ got involved with gangs, or when James died. And those are episodes that anybody that was alive back then, if you were like, forget about if you watch a show, you're aware that episode happened, and you suddenly realize if you didn't live in the inner city, you recognize how hard it is in the inner city. And that was the beauty of that show, was it said, these are real people living out there, and they're not different from you. They love, they laugh, and unfortunately, because of where they live, sometimes they die. And that's the part that may not be happening where you live. And so a lot of people woke up and went, oh, and I realized the power of television in that moment because, I didn't live in the inner city. I was the lone black kid in a predominantly white school. But I saw myself in that family, and I saw so much of my family in that family. And, and I've lost family members to, gun violence and things like that. So it's where I began to realize that was one of the first episodes where I saw the power of what media can do.
And you mentioned Norman Lear, who's here today. What was your first experience with Norman Lear in person?
You know what? I have never met Norman Lear in person, and I'm dying to. I worked for Greg Berlanti, who got really tight with Norman Lear around the time that Norman Lear bought one of the copies of the Constitution, because the Declaration of Independence. Which, like you do, sure, why not? If you got a couple of bucks lying around, pick up that old thing and frame it and put it on the wall. But to me, that's, I just dig everything he's about because he's always been about the idea of America, not what what America is, and the idea of America still has a gap between the two things. And, I love this country, but I have no doubt that Norman Lear loves this country, but he's like fighting the fight to say, let's finish the job. Let's get it all the way there so it's equal for all people. And he started doing that back in the 70s. He's here today because he's still continuing to do that fight. And he loves those words, and that piece of paper are the most powerful thing ever, and we still have yet to completely and utterly live up to it. So that to me is, I love the idea of America, and I love my country so much I keep pushing.
And the fact that Norman Lear, 91, his topics are still relevant from the shows that he did 40 years ago.
You could redo, Netflix is redoing One Day at a Time right now. They are redoing some of his shows because they are every bit as relevant today than they were when he did them first in the 70s. So we've moved the needle and we've gotten more aware, but we've still got a long ways to go before we cross the finish line.
And then you've also got a new show where you're doing something with fire, but
Oh yeah, there's that. Yeah, a spinoff of Grey's Anatomy. Yeah.
We're here for this today. We can talk about that tomorrow.
We'll
Awesome.
definitely talk about that tomorrow.
Nice to see you, Jason.
Thanks, man.